So a word of welcome to all of you who are gathered here in the sanctuary, which these days during the pandemic is a small group of people, appropriately so. Also welcome to people who are joining us from home on the live stream from St. Andrew. I'm Pastor Peter Johnson with Pastor Kelly Chapman and Pastor Deanna Kim Bassett as well. And we'll all be sharing in our conversation about the Intercultural Development Inventory here together, both what we've done individually as individuals, as we've taken the IDI, and most of us have had a chance to meet with a qualified administrator. And now we step into a new year together as individuals, but also as a congregation, as we look ahead into what we are about in making a more just world, one of our congregational initiative here at St. Andrew. Before though I get into the details here for our presentation, I want to acknowledge that we're all here with a heavier heart right now because of the circumstances going on in Washington, D.C. I know for all of us as we gathered here, immediately our conversation was centered around what's happening there. And please join all of us here together. And I'm going to offer just a brief prayer here to get us going for our IDI process for sure. But right now, more importantly, just for our nation and for the people who are our neighbors in our city and around the country. So let us pray. Gracious God, we do lift up today concerns that we have on our hearts that weigh heavily upon us this day, the news especially from Washington today. We pray, Lord, for understanding. We pray for nonviolence. We pray for resolution, for wisdom to prevail. We pray for all of our neighbors, no matter who they are, that we might be loving and caring and have empathy for one another. So help us see the way forward and through and beyond, but comfort us, Lord, in community and with your love that comes from Jesus. So bless us here in our nation as we also, too, have our continued conversations about how we play a role in making a more just world for ourselves and for our neighbors today and in 2021 and beyond. So we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, so maybe as I've already introduced you, maybe just a little bit about, just introduce each of yourselves too, just to make sure that we'll have new people participating in the live stream as well as people who participated in our prior conversation in November. So Pastor Kelly first.
Good evening, I'm Kelly Chapman. I served as pastor at Redeemer Lutheran Church in North Minneapolis for 20 years and retired as pastor of the congregation and the nonprofit Redeemer Center for Life. Back in February, like 2 weeks before I knew about this little thing called a pandemic, the COVID-19. So it's been a journey from there, and I've served the Lutheran Church my entire career. And part of my story is going from a Lutheran high school, Lutheran college, Lutheran seminary, and my journey as an African-American a Lutheran. And my deep love and desire that the church might embrace diversity even more than it is today. Great to be with you. Thank you.
Welcome, Kelly. It's great. Yeah, Pastor Deanna.
And I'm Pastor Deanna Kim. I am a pastor right now on my first call at Christ the River of Life Lutheran Church in Minneapolis, in North Minneapolis. And I was a member here before taking that first call for 15 years. So it was actually when I first started coming here and in deep Bible study during a time of year like this that I heard the call to go to seminary and become a pastor. So I'm glad to be doing that now and glad to be back here in community with St. Andrew. It's my home church.
Yeah, Deanna was even sharing that she heard the call to become a pastor during a Bible study on the story of Epiphany, which is the 6th of January in the calendar, and so we were reflecting about that as well. But as we think about the ongoing conversation that we're going to be having here over the next 55 minutes or so, Celeste is going to put on the screen a telephone number as well. It's 612-562-6795. This is the texting. Pastor Gail is here, and we'll be monitoring those incoming texts, and we'll insert them into our conversations here as we make our way through the evening. So don't be shy. Let us know what you're thinking and wondering, and Celeste will put that up on the screen every once in a while so that you can see that. I also sent it in an email as well, so you can check that as well. We, of course, started with a More Just World way back in late May, early June, with the call on our hearts as well to reflect more deeply on the death of George Floyd in our city of Minneapolis, very close by, and that launched us as a congregation into this pondering and wondering and desire to understand more wholly and completely, and to listen to our neighbors and community, and to see what role we could play in making what we are calling a more just world. And so thank you to St. Andrew and to people that are streaming with us and here in the sanctuary that are participating with us in all the books that we've read, the videos that we've watched, the sermons that we've heard, the Church Anew conference videos that we have shared in together. All of this is an effort for us to develop a deeper and wider understanding of our neighbor and the different cultures that exist. More recently, then, we welcome representatives from the Center for Leadership and Neighborhood Engagement, CLNE, which Pastor Kelly is the executive director, and Deanna is on staff there, as well as the congregation she serves. And thank you for the time that you have spent to do your online IDI. Number one, which took 50 questions, takes a little bit of time. Even more so for your time to meet with qualified administrators too, throughout the month of December. Then we had probably 60 or so appointments of members that were participating that met with Pastor Kelly and Pastor Deanna. And we thought we would do a little time here with Deanna and Kelly's leadership here to talk a little bit about those individual plans. And steps that we take in our personal plans before we move into some of the broader initiatives that we're thinking about here for small groups at St. Andrew, as well as for congregational initiatives, which we will get to here in a little bit. But first, we'll talk about individual experiences. And so the first step really is, I think people are making steps here already. And maybe we could talk a little about that. We have someone who can share a first step here in a moment after we introduce the topic. But go ahead, Pastor Deanna, and we can go from there. Yeah.
Before we get too far, I think I want to correct the phone number
Yes.
that they are to call if they are text if they have a question.
Okay.
It is 612-562-6796,
Okay.
not 95. 6796.
Thank you for the correction. Is that the correct one on the screen then too?
It's going to be the correct one on the screen as well.
Okay, great. So make note of the correction on the screen when that comes. Thank you, Pastor Gail. So Pastor Deanna.
Okay, yes. So this goes back to your plan. We're going to start with the individual plan, which is broken up into 4 sections: 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and then there's a number of sub-bullets underneath. And we'll start with 1.0. This is a place where you get to start right off the bat with thinking about, what is your culture now? Where do you find your culture, and what is in it? What makes that up? So I'm going to invite people to text in and call in and let us know what you are doing in section 1.0 to learn more about what you're doing. And I think to start us off, we have somebody here that can tell us a little bit about what they did in their section 1.0, 1.1 specifically, I think.
Yes, okay, thank you. So the task was to find out what your community is like racially. And so I went to the City of Edina website, no surprise, 85% white. But what I was surprised by, and pleasantly surprised by, is that because of an incident that happened in Edina, involving an off-duty Edina police officer and a black man in the street, that caused the City of Edina a lot of pain. But the good news is, because of that, the City Council said we've got to recognize these long-term racial inequities which have manifested in our community for decades. And so they created a race and equity task force to develop recommendations to address issues of race and inequity within the city. So it's a whole web page within the city's website. And right now they have 4 videos posted. There's a video by a Pakistani woman who's a resident of Edina and I believe a Muslim. There's a video by an employee who's a black woman. There's another video by a resident who's a white woman married to an interracial black man. And another video by an Edina police officer who is black. And they encourage residents to go on and share their own stories as well. So it's a fabulous resource, but I think it's totally in alignment with what we're trying to do here. It's like, okay, enough of just saying that's who we are. And if you read some of the comments by the people on the commission there, or residents that are just chiming in saying, I've been embarrassed by not doing anything, and now it's really liberating to learn that I'm not the only one that feels that way, and it's okay to make mistakes when you're talking about racial injustice as it pertains to yourself and within your community. But it's also really important to learn what to say when you're not comfortable saying something. So it's a great resource for residents of Edina, or anybody really. So I was really pleased to see that, because it's really totally in alignment with what we're trying to do here. So I think it's going to be very beneficial for developing my plan.
And how long would you say you spent doing that work?
Well, the first assignment spend, I think 30 minutes. I thought, is this really going to take 30 minutes? I probably was on the website for an hour.
Yes.
Honestly, it was really good, really good.
Good.
So I hope
Good.
the rest of the assignments are that easy.
I hope so too. Sounds like a great learning experience. Gail, has anybody else chimed in? I would like to just share my experience when I did my Section 1.1. I've done it several different ways, in Eden Prairie, in North Minneapolis, in workplaces, and churches, at least to the extent I could gather information. And it usually takes me about an hour. Now, I'm a quant head. In my prior life, I was an accountant. So maybe I'd like to do a little bit more analysis than more people. But one thing I learned about Eden Prairie, which you might find out if you did some research here, is that although we might be similar, say like 85% white, our people of color are living in concentrated areas of Eden Prairie. So it's not equally distributed throughout the city. And what are those areas like? And what are some of the similarities among the different areas of Eden Prairie, the different kinds of cultures, the different kinds of socioeconomic levels, and who's living there? And I was really surprised by some of what I found, and then I could drive there and check it out. And so I think it's really engaging to just look around and see things that you didn't know about that were right there. Yes.
So the phone number again is 612-562-6796. And so if you've had an experience that you've engaged with your IDI already, feel free to text that in to Pastor Gail. We can read it now. We can read it here in the next several minutes. I know for me, one of the things that got on my radar in the IDI process was to make intentional efforts to do different things. And one of those things, by nature of my being here at St. Andrew and the holiday giving program in November, was our partnership with Zion Baptist Church down the street from Redeemer. And our support of a learning pod allowed me to go and visit Zion Baptist Church and Pastor Brian Herron and the staff that are there. And not only was that something that I considered a joy and a responsibility of my job as being a pastor at St. Andrew, but it was a personal thing for me.
Yes.
To go to say to myself, this is part of my IDI commitments here, that I will dive into and experience this opportunity in a unique way, in a listening way, in a pondering way, and to get into a new neighborhood, of the city, to drive around it as I did a little bit more than what I maybe would not have done had I not been a part of the IDI conversations that we've been doing. And so that was one of the personal things that happened to me since I took the IDI and met with with Deanna, my qualified administrator, yeah, as another example. And so there maybe are some that are coming in, maybe there maybe there aren't some things yet that you've done formally that are that obvious yet either, but I think that's part of the process of putting together the individual plans.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. And the individual plans will also come together when you get together in small groups. I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but now you have something to talk in your small group about what your experiences were, and people will share with you what their experiences were.
Let me just add one thing that really struck me, and I wrote it down. And this is a woman that I think part of the committee, or they have a racial equity advancement team as well. I think it's comprised of employees. And this is a white woman saying, as a white person, you have the privilege of not thinking about race on a daily basis. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. Thanks, Dale, for sharing some of the ways that you've engaged this already. And I know we all are in different levels, in different ways. And one of the things is we talk about those individual plans. If we make a transition here to one way here at St. Andrew that we're thinking about moving forward into 2021 is these small groups that you mentioned here, Deanna. And so we can talk a little bit about what those are. Pastor Gail, do you have some input?
Yeah, someone here has texted in to say that they've not really done research, but they've been listening to a podcast called Black and Blonde that is two ladies and their experiences.
Okay, Black and Blonde is a podcast that someone's been listening to. We're hoping that these kinds of things can bubble up some energy among all the viewers, you know, that if these ideas are coming like this, that we know that we're all in this together, and these are some ideas that we could also take advantage of. So that's a great option. I've never heard of that one before. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's great energy, it's great things to throw out. And remember when you're going through things like the podcast to keep your focus on your individual plan. So everybody, or if you're in depending on which orientation that you're in, you'll have specific tasks like look for similarities or identify pieces of your own culture or whatever it happens to be. And when you're going through these exercises, stop and reflect on that. So what did I learn about my own culture? How can I take that into St. Andrew or in my home? And what happens in my home? And what do I learn from that as something that's here that's part of my culture? And then again, that's the objective part of the iceberg. So underneath the big under piece of the iceberg is this subjective part. What might that mean to me because we do this way? What are the values that I'm putting on this? You know, what do I think is respectful because of how I feel? What do I believe because of it? What do my family members believe when I say or do or, you know, make this happen? So those are all pieces of identifying culture that you'll want to go back to on your own in your own reflections.
I have a couple more here that have jumped in. Someone said, I took some time to look at the statistics of both Eden Prairie and Minnetonka, both with some diversity, but overall I recognize both communities are predominantly white. It's good to recognize this. I wish my employer would provide such statistics. And then we have another one, just the awareness it's created is awesome. I led our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee at work. When hiring and seeing the seatbelt violations against Black men on background checks, it's frustrating. Awareness is huge.
Yeah.
Great reflections. That's very helpful. Glad to hear of the dynamic engagement people are having like that.
Yeah. And when you hear statistics like this about people of color and seatbelts, let's just say, it makes you wonder, I think, why would that be the case, right? And not to judge other people, but just if I was this person, like how would I grow up to not be wearing my seatbelt and to have that a regular part of my life, right? And then to just keep exploring that with people in places where you feel comfortable, exploring that, places where you feel safe, so that you can get a sense for what do we value that's different? What do we value that's the same? How does this come across in what we're doing and how we're being together?
So the individual work is part of the process here, and so that's the first part of our presentation and discussion and dialogue here today, is to talk about those individual things, and then the second thing we want to talk about is how we can gain more support and encouragement in small group community. There are 79 of us so far who have taken the IDI. That's a big group of people for a large congregation like ours, and so it's much better to break that up into smaller groups for conversation and reflection. And I took the liberty with Pastor Gail to put everybody into small groups. So surprise, surprise. I've put you in a small group. There are 8 small groups of 10 people among our 80 people, 79 people. We've mixed them with members of the congregation, council members, and staff members. So every group will have those 3 things. I will be asking a staff member in each of those groups to use their Zoom account to help at least initiate those small group sessions. And then a leader can come out of that. It doesn't need to be necessarily the staff person. But we really do see that there's a lot of learning and growth that can happen with a dedication of a little time in a small group for conversation and reflection. And we have a plan for us to engage in that process too here at St. Andrew that we want to outline for you here tonight as we look at the next 4 to 5 months going forward, okay? So the first one coming up is an important commemorative day, always in our country's history, with the celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday. Of course, it's the 3rd Monday of January. Just tomorrow morning, here in the sanctuary, will be filmed a special Martin Luther King service, commemorative service, with participants from our Black friends, from congregations in Minneapolis, including Pastor Kelly, who will be here again. He's going to sleep in my office tonight so that he can be here first thing in the morning to record the service. But we are producing this service from the lens and the voice of our Black friends to commemorate that occasion. This will be made available to small groups. We can view it individually, wherever we would like, but what we're wanting is that small groups come together for their first meeting to talk about this Martin Luther King service, to reflect upon it as a group. So that'll be one role of the first small group session. Pastor Gail and I look forward to facilitating those conversations by providing some questions that you can talk about. So it's not going to be leaderless. We'll give some prompts, some questions, discussion questions, open-ended ones, and the group can take it over Zoom from there. And then the other part of those small group sessions is really going to be a touch base, and we'll rely on Pastor Deanna and Pastor Kelly and other representatives from CLNE to help us think about our individual plans, what we're experiencing, what we're seeing, how we're interpreting not only the MLK service, but the other items on our plans, to encourage each other in a way to keep ourselves accountable to this process, because we want to embrace this here, and so we want to lovingly do that in a mutual and supportive way. So that's the first small group point here. Pastor Gail, was there some input from someone?
Yes, we just have a quick question that they haven't taken the IDI yet. Where can we take it?
Yes, if you have not yet taken the IDI, send me a note. I have already sent to another member of CLNE some information about how to do that and how to link with a qualified administrator already, a couple this week. So just send me an email, let me know that that is you, and I'll make sure you get connected in the right way. Great. So that's the first step, is this intentional effort in a small group to talk about our individual plans, as well as debrief the Martin Luther King commemorative service by Church Anew is the first step. And that would be, we hope, sometime before the end of January. And maybe for an hour Zoom conversation that can be set up. I will be sending emails out to all the small groups tomorrow to get you guys all geared up and so forth. But that will be that'll be the first step in the process. Then, any comments or questions about that before I go on?
I would say that when you're watching the Church Anew video, when you're watching the Martin Luther King special worship service, to watch it and reflect on some of the things that are in your goals. So think about what you want your goals to be in section 2.0, and think about what you're learning in this process and reflect on that. And I think the more that you get together in small groups and with other people and you feel comfortable sharing your goals and what came to you, what epiphany came to you, what you're struggling with, how might your goal be better? Because I think we're always refining our goals as well. So working on making those fit what you do every day will be very important.
Yeah, I might add to that as well, something, Deanna, just pay attention to what you might feel some tension around or discomfort. And remember that as you go through that service, where we are today and where we might have been 50 or more years ago when Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement was in existence. So pay attention to those areas of what are you feeling and how does that connect with your IDI?
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I know that that'll be part of what will come to us in bold ways, in challenging ways, but important ways, as we listen. I mean, our job is to listen, I think, during this process, and then to engage it then in a mutually supportive environment, but to listen and try to understand more deeply what the voices are saying. And so they might be, there'll be some wonderful challenging words blended in as well. So that would be our first step here in January. Looking forward then into February, March, and April, our very own Pastor Kelly has a book that he's going to talk a little bit about here that is going to be our setting for our small group conversations coming up then here in February, March, and April in that configuration, we think. And so tell us a little bit more about what you're putting together for shepherding the dialogue.
Well, speaking of tension and agitation, out of my plan came the commitment to write a book. And a book as a African American and a Lutheran and my journey in life, to write a book about my journey and my story. And the book goes through 3 stages of development, and it's intended to be a workbook, a reflection for congregations, individuals, and it really parallels with the IDI. And the movement goes through a development of forming, reforming, and transforming. The forming would be a question like thinking about the first time that you noticed a person of a different color or culture, and just remembering that time that you noticed that difference. Reforming would be when you notice that person of a different color or culture, and what kind of decisions did you make about that? How did that impact you? What did that do to your consciousness about noticing race or culture and difference? And then transforming is about those times when you may have made a decision to be in relationship with someone of a different race or culture. So reflecting on those places of development, and then reflecting on that and maybe tying that to your IDI or your plan, and that movement that we all go through in the stages of development around race and culture, and creating that appetite and that movement toward that being from maybe monocultural to intercultural. But it's about that movement from forming, reforming, and transforming. And the book isn't complete yet, and so we're excited that St. Andrew would be the first audience for the book, and maybe feedback and response from your experience that will help us maybe fine-tune the book even more before we go into print. And we hope the book to be ready for St. Andrew by late January and early February, but hopefully for sure during the season of Lent.
Yep, and we will look forward to receiving that, and will be a distribution point for all of that as well here at St. Andrew as we work with you on that. I like the concept as you've described it here too, as a platform for deeper conversation. So thank you for that. And we would look, and it's meant to be a dialogical book, isn't it? A book for groups to get together and talk and to share. And so it'll generate in and of itself deeper conversation around this topic, as Kelly has described. And you maybe noticed already here too, as you think about your individual IDI and you wonder what you're going to fill in as your goals, we're kind of filling in the goals for you here, aren't we? I mean, with the small group opportunity, with the book that you're going to read, all those things can go right onto your plan, as ways that you're dedicating to this process. So we're trying to make it trying to fill in your plan for you in a way.
Maybe you'll all write a book.
Yeah, that's. So yeah,
What I really like about Pastor Kelly, I call him PK sometimes, so I have to slow down to say Pastor Kelly.
Yeah.
Okay. What I like about PK's book is that it offers this opportunity to see what comes out, where you feel that tension, like you had said, and live in a little bit of discomfort for a while. And when you're living in that discomfort, learn what it is that's causing that discomfort within you, because it will point you to maybe some things that have happened to you in the past, maybe when you were very young perhaps, but things where there might be room for healing and just being a more whole person, because the more whole you can be, the better you can be with other people. So I think that just hearing you talk about it is very exciting, and I'm looking forward to it also.
One of the things that I hope the book will facilitate, and Dale, you kind of mentioned this, is that one of the challenges for white people when it comes to the topic of race is guilt and shame. And so being able to have a resource where we can have the conversations without guilt or shame, so we really work through things and develop more of that opportunity of moving toward actually living into being the people that we aspire to be without the disabling reality of guilt and shame.
Yeah, that's great.
Sounds good.
I look forward to that. Sounds really good. That looks really, really good. So that's just the beginnings of some small group. As we said, we talked about individual plans and what we're doing individually. We've talked about some small group initiatives here that we're looking to do. We also wanted to talk a little bit about some congregational plans as well that Pastor Gail and I will engage with here at St. Andrew on that institutional level, so that this is something that is part of our programmatical understanding as a congregation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we have planned now at this time. Remember the phone number. You can text in questions or comments. 612-562-6796 is the number. Pastor Gail is here, and we'll make sure it gets on the air, so to speak, so please feel free. But when we think about congregational plans too, Pastor Kelly and Pastor Deanna shared some comments that they heard as a part, and others of the qualified administrators shared some comments that people said during the individual debriefs. I thought it might be helpful for you to hear a couple of those comments. And it helps flavor a bit of what we've already been talking about and what the congregation looks to do here as well. And so Pastor Kelly and Pastor Deanna provided statements like, I live too much in a bubble. I need exposure to diversity in our community. I know there is growing diversity in Eden Prairie, but my own circle is small. I want more exposure to gain understanding of difference. Another comment, I didn't realize I had a culture. I bet you can relate to some of these, I think. I sure can. I used to go downtown and meet with friends, but now I'm afraid. I'm looking forward to growing in this way as a leader at work and in my family. So these integration calls. So those are, there could be lots of other ones, but I think those are. It's a nice snapshot maybe of where we find ourselves as a congregation here in Eden Prairie, pondering and wanting. What is it that we want? Those phrases kind of help put that together. In the area then of congregational initiative here, what Pastor Gail and I will keep an eye on here carefully is a level of integration and intentionality. Okay, so there, one of the things when we talk about shame and guilt, one of the things that happens in race relations is that something will happen and then we'll forget about it and go back to normal. Where nothing is normal anymore. It ought not to be normal anymore, but we should. But so we need to keep a foot on the gas, so to speak. We need to keep being intentional about integrating. And so Pastor Gail and I, along with the staff here at St. Andrew, we'll just make sure that we keep this integrated. We will pray about it on Sunday mornings. We will have support for the small groups that you're working in more locally, which is one of our goals here as well, to make sure that the small groups are supported. Also, we want to be carefully and intentional about a more just world as a phrase and as a mission to embody here at St. Andrew. It's our programmatical name, and we want to make sure that that's part of our words and our vocabulary here at St. Andrew. That it's something that we are that rolls off our tongues in the way that our mission statement also does. We live out our faith in daily life. We also want to have it in our minds, in our marketing, in our communication, in our psyche. That we're about creating a more just world here with God and with one another and as a congregation. And so that's a lot of that will just be in story and maybe in video and so forth. But that kind of thing is important for us as well, moving forward. Another aspect that we will be working on with staff as we plan out the remainder of this program year are some large group check-ins, so that your small groups will be going monthly, we think, is manageable, but there'll be some large group check-ins, kind of like what we're doing here with Pastor Kelly and Pastor Deanna, but we'll vary up, I think, the theme and the program too, for our own education and for our own learning. So we know that there is, as you mentioned, Dale, your study of Edina and the cultural makeup of Edina. I think it would be really valuable for us to have someone come to St. Andrew and present about our own local community. What is Eden Prairie, really? And invite us into understanding more deeply the community in which we live, more immediately, so that we're. I think this is something we need to be told. I think it's something we don't know. If people are saying, I live in my own little circle and this is what I know, well, let's broaden that circle and know a little bit more here. And so I think one of the large group sessions then, to be determined, a date and a time, would be a live stream here in the sanctuary with someone who can invite us into our neighborhood even more fully. So stay tuned for that. I think that would be really valuable. Another one would be some more support on the IDI plan that we're doing and discussion. Could be another idea here as we're working it in small groups and developing some accountability. Maybe have Pastor Deanna, Pastor Kelly, or other parts of CLNE back to help us keep our eye on the ball, to help us be individually intentional about the process, touch base. How are we doing? Are we struggling? And so forth. We could do that. We
Pastor
also
Peter?
wonder, okay, and Pastor Gail, someone from sending some comments in?
Yeah, just a quick question here. From a congregational level, where there are some common themes or topics that came out from the IDI survey, in other words, what were a few more of those kinds of themes is what the question is about, so.
In addition to the quotes that I shared, those general quotes?
Maybe we can just go back through those again. Those were,
Sure.
expand those a little bit.
Sure. Well, and I think we could also maybe review if at our debrief that we had in late November, I think there was the congregational placement where, the number of individuals that were in minimization,
Yes.
those that were in polarization. Do you have any Any recollection of those, Deanna or Kelly, that could also help?
I don't. I remember that most people were in minimization. So something like over half the people were in minimization.
Yep.
And then there were some people in polarization close to denial, and then maybe like a handful of people in acceptance. Yep.
I remember that as well, kind of a distribution.
And perhaps what we can do is when we get into our small groups, we can provide a little bit of that outline of some things that can be a talking point as a part of those small group conversations.
Sure.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Yep, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and to know when you're in your small groups that you're going to hear a lot of different voices, because even if you're, let's just say, in polarization, you might say some things that come from a place of minimization or acceptance. Or if you're in acceptance, you might say some things that come from a place of minimization or polarization. And the idea is to hear what people are really saying and to understand their context. So because most of us are in minimization, it could be easy to think we're all thinking the same thing when really we're not thinking the same thing. So keep both of those things in mind. Well, did I just hear something that confirmed that we're all together, or did I just hear something that might have given a hint to there's a different perspective here that we're not considering? Because people in the minority that maybe have a different opinion might not feel comfortable saying that in a larger group. Maybe it's even the first time it's coming out of their mouth in ever, or maybe the first time in a group like they're in right then. And so they might need some help developing their ideas and really knowing even what they're thinking about. And you can give them that place and space in a group to say some things, try it on, go home, think about it again, or go away from the group, think about it again, and talk about those kinds of things. I think that's some of the best growth that you can have as a person and in a group is the non-curriculum stuff, just talking about your own perspectives and what you're noticing or what you're not noticing or what somebody else is noticing. So keep those things in mind in your groups.
One of the things that stood out to me was the bubble comment, and people feeling like they are living in the bubble of their family, their church, and though they may be around diversity at work, they don't know how to break through that bubble to connect with another person. And so how to move beyond that place of the routine to actually engage that other person. So what kind of support might there be to strengthen that? And I don't know that it's permission. I don't know what it is, but how do you break through that to actually connect with diversity, even as it is here in Eden Prairie or in their workplace?
That's right. Pastor Gail, another comment?
An expansion on the question. Someone else said that in addition to Eden Prairie, can we also include information on makeup of neighboring communities, since many of us don't live and or work in Eden Prairie? So a little bit more on what you were saying.
Yeah, no, that's right. We do cross a lot of borders here at St. Andrew and in our work lives and so forth, so it's more complicated than that. A bit of a comment about small group dynamics too, I think is, like you've alluded to already, Pastor Deanna, but part of the depth of a small group is to give it permission to be open and honest and authentic. And sometimes that in the beginning is not so easy. It's all by Zoom, of course, right now, but also there's a level of trust that's needed to say, am I really going to share what I really, really feel, or am I just going to hang back, and do this, but not do it fully? And I think we know what that feels like when we're with people that we can be really honest with, and we also know what it feels like to be a little bit more. And our hope is that if we can, letting you talk about what it means to make a covenant with each other, that everything is confidential, that there's no judgment in the room, we're all coming as children of God in a stance of learning and of listening, and if we can start off on that right page, then perhaps then we can build some of that trust right away. So while you might be a little hesitant perhaps to talk about maybe some of the things like Pastor Kelly said about the MLK service, but I want to make sure the small groups have permission to really let themselves be real. People be real within them. That's where they really make the most impact. Pastor Gail?
Yes, another question. Will groups be homogeneous on the IDI scale?
We have made no effort to, at this point in time, to place.
You're not even, you don't even know people's scores, right?
I don't even know people's scores. So what I did, here's what I did. I just went down the 78 people alphabetically, made sure families were together because families can be together in the small group. That's helpful in building trust and so forth. And then I just made sure that there was a staff person and a council member in each of the groups. So it's not completely alphabetical, but that's all that I knew. And so there's no distinction. We don't know who's who in the group at all, which maybe is comforting perhaps, right? Then you can go and engage then knowing that you still have a few cards that you can play, but hopefully you'll be willing to play them at the same time. You know what I mean?
And Pastor Peter, can you tell us a little bit more about the covenant process and what the groups might receive to build that trust?
Well, I'll just provide a sheet of paper that basically then just talks about, in a very basic way, 5 points about how a small group, as it functions in a covenanted relationship, that it has confidentiality, that it has a non-judgmental reality, that you agree to meet for an hour, that your meetings aren't going to go on for 3 hours. You'll know that there's a quitting time and that kind of, so there are some boundaries that are set up that'll give you a comfort level about it. But I'll provide the leaders or the groups a covenant that you then can sort through and read through and understand together.
That sort of aligns with the second question from this person. Will you send out small group guidelines? Are there other things that might be on this paper that go out to the small group leaders?
Yeah, so I think there'll be how to do a small group and how to do it well and with intention, number one. And I think also as you engage in these topics like the Martin Luther King service, we want to be able to provide you with discussion questions so that you're not hanging out to dry, but you've got some things to talk about in your small group. Also with Pastor Kelly's book, maybe there are questions already built in to those. If there aren't, we want to make sure that there are those kinds of materials that are available for people to preview and use during the small group sessions.
I would just like to throw into that, one of the, PK and I sometimes have a group that we get together in, and when we do, we have a covenant that we will enter into a brave space, recognizing that no space can be completely safe, that you might incur something from the environment that isn't what you expected or wanted, but that we enter into a brave space where we all try to agree that we will try to be courageous and put ourselves out there to the extent that it makes sense to us and we feel comfortable and live on that edge of where we are in the moment so that we can get the most out of that time together. And I think that that is the way we get the most of our time together.
Yeah, I think that's great. So like as a congregation, we're thinking about integration and intentionality. A covenant can be a personal one too, that I will be integrative and seek to be intentional in this small group in the same way. Pastor Gail?
Just a comment to affirm your comments about the group interaction and that the interaction and trust are critical, particularly with this topic. One more. Love that brave space idea from Diane.
Brave space, yeah.
And it should be confidential too, to the group. So the staff member that's part of your staff won't be coming back to the staff to share something, right?
No,
Yes, that's not going to be happening.
I mean, it's a process of being vulnerable, you know, and that's never easy to do. But if we're all being vulnerable a little bit together and are willing to be a little vulnerable together, then it's just deeper. Yeah. So thanks for your willingness to give it a try, and we'll support that process. As we also think about more institutional goals here at St. Andrew, Pastor Gail and I will be taking individual, time with the church council as well as with church staff too, because this is a leadership reality at St. Andrew that we want to be intentional and integrative as well, short and long term. And so our council needs to have it on their radar. You should know that ever since A More Just World began here at St. Andrew in June, there has been on the boilerplate council meeting agenda a little briefing and debriefing on what's going on with A More Just World. Now, how that continues and how we use the IDI now more intentionally in January and probably February and moving forward and so forth, that's our commitments with the council and staff as well programmatically too. I mean, they're all staff have participated in the IDI and have done their individual debriefs with qualified administrators, and we want to make sure that A More Just World becomes part of programming thinking and wondering. So in terms of small groups, in terms of youth ministry, and in terms of worship and those kinds of things, that we're thinking about these things intentionally and can be held accountable to that as well. So council and staff training. We also wonder too about another IDI entry point for people. This is just 79 people of our whole congregation, and so we don't want to leave anybody behind. And so not only are we wanting to make sure that people have entry points, like these large group sessions that we talked about, the one about Eden Prairie specifically, and looking ahead and so forth. We want to have entry points, including taking the IDI, meeting with a qualified administrator at CLNE, and going through the process that you've gone through. We want to make sure that people who didn't do it last fall can do it again. So Pastor Gail?
A question for Pastor Kelly. What are some areas, maybe at a high level, that we as individuals or congregation that could focus on that would have potential value for some long-term value to the Black community? Second question, are there other groups that we could partner with?
Well, that's a great question. There's an organization called Center for Leadership and Neighborhood Engagement. That's one great resource to you. And things like the podcasts, where you're able to actually listen to and be in relationship during a time of social distancing, where you can hear the voices of Black and brown and diverse voices, where you don't have to be physically in place. And so there's a learning there. Another big part of that, I think, in connecting more with the Black community and other communities, is what are the things, disciplines that you can be doing, like everything you're doing here, that create more empathy. So you may not have contact with people, but to develop more empathy and connecting with like those caring relationships, that actually facilitates that movement toward actual relationship. So I think empathy is a critical beginning point. And the other thing I would say is more connectivity between our theology, our Lutheran theology, and how that actually empowers us to be in relationship with other people, and how things like racism subvert our theology because it breaks down the relationship with people, that actually Jesus calls us to be in relationship with people, but those isms, those ways interfere with that, and they create fear and barriers. And so all of this really is grounded in our theology. That's a relational theology that's rooted in how God comes into our lives in the person of Jesus Christ, about loving our neighbor. Where two or more are gathered in my name, there am I. So those relationships. And I think those are building blocks for things like getting on the website at Edina community to actually make some of those movements that bring her into closest contact. And lastly, there's a great, Brian Stevenson wrote a book where he talks about proximity. And so all of this, I hope, actually brings us into closer proximity to those people that we see as other because of the ways that our society sets it up. And so as we are in proximity to people in Eden Prairie or wherever we are, that being in closer proximity, even to the people that we work with every day, but we're physically there, but we haven't made that movement into actually having a brave conversation with them. And the brave conversations that you have in your small group actually is a springboard for those brave conversations with the people that are next door to us every day. But we don't have the practice in how to break through those taboos of, am I going to say the wrong thing? Right? When you can practice that in your small group, and that actually facilitates having those congregations with people in real time.
Our first and critical partnership, as you can hear as Pastor Kelly and Pastor Deanna talk, is with the Center for Leadership and Neighborhood Engagement, because we couldn't do what we're doing right now without your faithful leadership and wisdom. And so, our goal also is to maintain this conversation and look forward, especially in a post-pandemic world, what that looks like physically, service-related. Right now we're quite subdued, obviously, in what we can do, and maybe some of this work that we're thinking about is a little bit more introspective and small group and congregational, energizing. But ultimately, it needs to shift gears into, okay, well, if the fall of 2021 sees opportunities, where might we go from our learnings here into the world, into our community, into Minneapolis? What might those partnerships look like? And the ongoing relationship with CLNE is an important part of that process for us as we partner together.
Great.
In the process. Yeah. It is 3 minutes until 7:30. And so before I wrap with a few of some final comments, Pastor Gail, anything in addition from the fans at home? Nothing from there? Pastor Deanna or Pastor Kelly, any closing comments or words for us?
We're excited to be on this journey with you and Church Anew, and that how to, as a faithful people, to move across those boundaries that we don't often move across because it's unfamiliar territory. So, we're just thankful to be on this journey with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say echo those comments. So thankful to be part of St. Andrew here as a member, and then also to have you join with us in North Minneapolis or in Minneapolis and come into the city. Yeah, it's great to be with you and to see this grow together. And I feel like Christ the River of Life Lutheran Church is also a Lutheran church. It looks a little bit different than this. But I think that we do this because we are Lutheran. That this is why we're moving through and building our intercultural skills and moving towards into this brave space together is because we are Lutheran. So it's great to be part of all of this. Yeah.
Thank you for the partnership and the collegiality and the friendship. When we have our meetings and conversations, I look forward to them because I think there's genuine friendship and collegiality and a shared desire to move forward. And we hope that shows now and as we move forward here in our journey here together. In this process, long process here together. Yes. So just a couple of takeaways here before we say goodnight. Again, we're forming up these small groups. The Martin Luther King worship service it will be made available to those small groups. We'll communicate with those small groups about how to be and how to form up and so forth. With the first task is to view in advance the service and then come together and talk about it. We have Pastor Kelly's book then after that in February, March, and April or so for further conversation in those small groups to deepen awareness. A few large group sessions that are coming up as well for engagement, as well as all the stuff that's going on at St. Andrew here institutionally as we look to train and equip us in the form of integration and inspiration. So before we depart, one more comment, Pastor Gail?
Yeah, just one last comment that came in says, thank you, St. Andrew, thank you, CLNE, and thank you, Pastor Kelly and Pastor Deanna. This is exciting.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
awesome. That's a great way to close here, everyone. So
Amen.
thanks. God bless all of you here. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to what the rest of our 2021 holds with respect to a more just world. Thanks for joining us. God bless.
Yeah, peace.